Hey, folks, welcome into the It's Official podcast. I'm Jeremy Plonk, First Bet and Express Bet representing here alongside Jeff Siegel. Opening weekend at Santa Anita. Siegel's been kind of like laying on the couch for 2 weeks since Del Mar ended. You're back to work, partner.
I am back to work and glad to be back to work. I mean, I have a vacation length of about 2 days. And then I start feeling it. I don't think I could go anywhere because I'd be stir crazy if I couldn't be working. That's me. That's who I am. But it's good to have back. And of course, between now and Breeders' Cup Day, nothing but great racing around the country. Big racing this weekend for sure out here at Santa Anita as we reopen, but around the country as well. Some critical Breeders' Cup prep races. We'll handicap those on Friday. But today we're going to look back at some over the weekend that we just completed, and there were some significant performances, some good, some not so good.
Yeah, and some of the biggest divisions in racing, the Distaff and the Classic division, certainly had headliners at Parks last week, and no bigger headliner in the Distaff division this year than the 3-year-old filly thorpedoana. She's run through everybody except Fierceness, coming up about a head short in the Travers Stakes. She was back in a spot where she was absolutely expected to win and win easily in the Cotillion Stakes. It wasn't as easy as we thought. Let's check out the close call. Jessica Paquette on the call.
Mystic Lake continues to lead just off of her outside. Gunsong, she's beginning to move under a drive. thorpedoana, Tarifa, she's in third. They go around the far turn in the Cotillion, a quarter mile left to go. Mystic Lake has led all the way, but now she has some company coming. Gunsong up to confront her, and Gunsong sticks her nose in front. thorpedoana swings to the outside, and the Grizzly now begins to roar. Gunsong has the lead. thorpedoana on the outside. Tarifa, Gunsong game, but here comes thorpedoana. A 16th left to go. thorpedoana, the Grizzly has the heart of a lion. thorpedoana gets the win, a narrow victory over a very game Gunsong in the Cotillion.
Of course, Gunsong winner of the Black Eyed Susan earlier this year. thorpedoana, the winner of the Oaks. So the Oaks and Black Eyed Susan winners closer than the experts thought, as Lee Corso would say on College Game Day. Jeff, what do we make of this? Is this a sign of the, tread coming off the tires after a tough campaign? Was this a race where it was just a little bit of a bounce after a very vigorous race in the Travers Stakes? What do we make of it?
Well, we don't know, but I would say that this could have easily been predicted as a reaction to a very hard, taxing race in which she earned a career top 111 Beyer number when she went down in the Travers by a head, and she laid her body down in that race. And you give them time off, you hope they come back, but sometimes, no matter how much time you give them, they need more. And in this particular case, maybe it was a money grab. I don't know if I would have run her with the Breeders' Cup coming up. That's the most important race. I mean, certainly it's a lot of money, but I've never thought that most owners or trainers worry about that. They want their horse to be at their best. And thorpedoana, she went from a 111 to a 93. That's a massive drop. This was a neck victory at 10 cents on the dollar, beating a filly who was 44 to 1. And I think it was much more of a case of thorpedoana running down to the level than the other one rising up. So I don't know where we're at with her. I mean, could she bounce back in her next race, which I'm pretty sure she's going to have to win, because this race isn't going to win the Breeders' Cup Distaff, I don't think. Now, she didn't get a great trip. She was behind horses in a box. Maybe got a little frustrated. Maybe got a little angry, and then but when she finally got clear, the last 16th of a mile in this race, and I know it was a dead track, but still 7 1/5 the last 16th, so she really wasn't accelerating. And again, we're going to have to watch her closely in the morning now to try to come up with a educated guess as to whether she's a thorpedoana that ran so well in the Travers or the one that barely won the Cotillion. I'm not sure what to make of it right now.
Right. You're not looking at that straight shot of ascension, right? So, and that's where you have to, as a horse player, say, does it circle back up now, or does it continue to drop? The workouts are going to tell us. And when we get to Breeders' Cup time, that's kind of like Kentucky Derby, the moves are scrutinized. And in a filly who is this popular, this well-known, and this respected by the racing community and the gamblers, her works are going to be highly scrutinized. And I think you want to see something very impressive, or else you might just have to assume she's the 6-5 favorite right now at oddschecker.com in the international betting markets to win the distaff. To take a very short price on her now against older mares for the first time, that'll be an interesting situation as what price you're willing to take with her, because again, unless these workouts are spectacular, there's fair reason to think maybe the descent is upon us right now. And of course, she could circle back and be a monster 4-year-old next year. But, campaigns take their time. There's no question about it. Everything you do to a horse, there's a payoff and a payback to it. And, they've been paid off really well, but the payback could be that she's going to need some time here pretty soon. Second choice in the international markets is Idiomatic, the defending champ, at 6-1, and then 8-1 on Adair Manor in the international markets. Of course, Adair Manor, she's been AWOL since scratching at Del Mar after tying up. So the division's there for the taking for sure, because Idiomatic doesn't look as strong as she did last year either. But if not Thorpedoana, then whom? And it could be one of those wacky years of an Unbridled Elaine or somebody like that in the Breeders' Cup distaff that nobody's thinking about. Maybe somebody from Japan. Japan had the big upset on the dirt a couple years back. So the distaff seems a little more like the door is open after that performance.
Yeah, it really is. And again, the good news is we have so many workouts for Thorpedoana at XPTV. We can go back and look at how she breezes when she was really good as opposed to what we see now. So you can compare them a little bit and see where we're at. I'd love to see Thorpedoana, pull the jock out of the saddle. And she was breezing like that before the Travers. You knew she was ready to run the race of her life. And now, you never know. So we'll see. Of course, we're still waiting for Adair Manor to get back on the tab. And because on her home track at Del Mar, I mean, there's an option maybe to go for a better price if you think that one isn't quite as good, and maybe if Adair Manor can come back and show us that she's ready. But anyway, it was a good race, an exciting race. I'm glad she won it, not because I bet on her, but because I want her to maintain her, her credibility and her ranking. But again, this sport never lets you enjoy anything, right? It's right. There's always something to worry about. Yeah. Kenny McPeak's going to have a watchful eye on this filly and make sure that she's as good now, as good then as she has been. Otherwise, there may be some worrisome to do.
And as much as we look to the sky and think it might be falling, she's one win away of possibly being Horse of the Year. If she wins the Breeders' Cup distaff and things work a little bit differently in the Classic than people are expecting, she might be Horse of the Year this year. So there's a lot to be won and a lot to be lost in terms of prestige and honor for her next start. It's going to be the tell-all for what has been just a fantastic campaign up to this point. We'll stick to Parks. We'll stick to the 3-year-old division. And the Pennsylvania Derby was the feature race on that card. The Cotillion kind of had the pizzazz, though, with Thorpedoana. As far as the Pennsylvania Derby went, they did have the Preakness winner in there. And many handicappers, myself and Jeff included, said unless it rains on Saturday at Parks, Seize the Gray probably won't get another big victory. But then they handed him the lead.
They go around the far turn. Seize the Gray has the lead. Unmatched Wisdom and Stronghold continue to come on the outside. Uncle Heavy, the Pennsylvania bred, running a huge race today. Seize the Gray has the lead on the outside. Stronghold, Dragoon Guard coming up the rail. In the Pennsylvania Derby, it is anyone's race. It's Seize the Gray, game on the lead. To the outside, Stronghold continues to fight on. Dragoon Guard not getting there. A 16th left to go. And Seize the Gray, he's going to seize the day in the Pennsylvania Derby. Seize the Gray gets the win. Photo for second between Dragoon Guard and Stronghold.
So Jeff Seize the Gray for the second time this year gets away on the front end like he did at Pimlico, 49 and change, 113. But he had a kick clear at the end. He was drawn away at the end of this one. Stronghold just flattened out with his run at him. What do we think of Seize the Gray now, a horse who really, until he won the Pat Day Mile on Derby Day, nobody was talking about him in the 3-year-old division with much, vigor and interest. Now, all of a sudden, he's in the hunt.
Well, we learned a lot in this race, I think, Jeremy. Seize the Gray is the kind of horse that we thought maybe it was the mud, but it's basically he needs to be in the fray. And I don't know any horse in this race that wouldn't have won if you give him the easy lead and go 49-1, 113-4. Right. And Seize the Gray can do that. One thing I've also learned about this from Stronghold is that he cannot and will not finish. He did when he won the Santa Anita Derby. I overrated him after that race, but since then he's hung every time you sent him over there. He hung in the Derby. I thought, well, okay, maybe couldn't run that far, but in 2 subsequent races, including this one, he just kind of waved the white flag. He gets there and he says, "Okay, go ahead." And I'm really, really soft on Stronghold now. Dragoon Guard had won 4 in a row, but all of them were gate to wire, and I thought, come out of the gate and make the run.
Go.
And no. Oh, he can sit second or third. No, he can't. Not against this group. And he got through every step of the way, had no finish. I said on one thing I was right about this race last Friday on First Call. I said Unmatched Wisdom is overrated, and not even liking him, I overrated it because he didn't run any good. He was fifth. He was right there. So this race to me is troublesome in the sense that Seize the Gray. I'll say what I said. He's not that good, but if you give him the lead on a silver platter, I'll give him credit. He is good enough to take advantage of it. Some horses aren't, and he was handed the lead. This race was over into the clubhouse turn. Inside speed and a horse that doesn't need the mud to win, as he proved he won at Churchill. But man, I mean, there's not a horse in this race that if you just let him go, that they wouldn't be good enough to win. I thought it was going to be Dragoon Guard, but once they took him back, forget it. So now Wayne Lucas has got a decision to make. Does he run the 1.25 miles or does he go in the mile? The mile will be tougher for him to make the lead, but the 1.25 miles is going to be a way, way tougher race, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the I mean, I have plenty of advice to give to trainers if they want my advice as to where to run. But Wayne, on this one, you're on your own. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, you're right, because the pace is going to be hotter in the dirt mile for sure with the shorter trip. But then you look at the classic, and the competition will be far more stout. Now, let's just talk about within the 3-year-olds before we get too far ahead of ourselves with the Breeders' Cup with Seize the Gray. How about the 3-year-olds where they stand right now? There are a trio of top 3-year-old dirt horses who have 2 Grade 1 wins on the main tracks this year. Dornoch won the Belmont Stakes and then won the Haskell. Fierceness won the Florida Derby, then the Travers, and Seize the Gray won the Preakness, of course, and then just added the Pennsylvania Derby. So 6 of those Grade 1s split up between the trio of horses. On resumes, they all look fairly similar. I give a little edge to a horse who's won a Classic, so maybe Fierceness is behind with the Florida Derby and the Travers being his 2 big wins to this point, and of course the Florida Derby being so much earlier in the year. Seize the Gray and Dornoch leading right now, but I think if you talk to people, they would say Fierceness is the top 3-year-old in America going into the Breeders' Cup. So how would you vote, Jeff, if there was an Eclipse Award vote right now and you had to cast it? Where are you going amongst this trio of 3-year-olds?
Now, Fierceness destroyed Seize the Gray and Dornoch and the Travers. I mean, I mean,
the head-to-head.
Yeah, nobody that I know of thinks that Seize the Gray is better than Fierceness. He won the Preakness on the lead when handed an easy lead in the mud, and then the same thing happened on a fast track in the Pennsylvania Derby. So, I mean, you're right. On resume, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? But
it does look good on paper, yeah.
Yeah, but there's no way Fierceness is not better than Seize the Gray, and he beat Dornoch, obviously, in the last race as well. So, I mean, Fierceness is going to be first or second choice in the Breeders' Cup Classic,
right?
And Seize the Gray is going to be a long shot, no matter where he shows up. And Dornoch's got a chance to bounce back because he does have, good form and solid form, and he's run with the best. But I mean, Fierceness to me is the best of that 3, and it's his to lose, really. I mean, he's really going to have to turn in a really lousy race, which he's been known to do in the Classic. And even then, you probably shouldn't hold it against him because the Classic is not against 3-year-olds. If this was for 3-year-olds only, this award we're talking about, I mean, you shouldn't be penalized if you're running against older horses. So I think Fierceness, again, it's his to win or lose. And based on his form, based on the way the track played this summer at Del Mar, based on how the 1.25 miles plays at Del Mar, Fierceness, who should be up in the fray every step of the way, if not in front, should have every chance and no excuse to turn in a top effort and have his chance to win.
It's been so long ago since we've even mentioned the name Mystic Dan, where have you gone?
Ooh.
Mystic Dan. I mean, right? Who? That's it. Another 3-year-old last week who was pretty impressive, batting down, winning the Bourbon Trail at Churchill. Looked pretty good on the front end. He might have been pretty effective in that Pennsylvania Derby near the front as well. Maybe we'll see batting down in a dirt mile type situation. He would seem like a good horse, maybe to try that one if they go Breeders' Cup in that direction. Now, which direction will we talk Breeders' Cup next? Well, next is the key name. There's only one choice left for next after a repeat dominant performance in the Greenwood Cup at Parks. The dirt marathoner was at it again, up to his old tricks, looking as good as he has all year, winning for the 4th straight time on this campaign. Jeff will tell you where he should go next after you watch his win in the Greenwood Cup.
And Next has taken over. Riding with Biden has no answer. Next leads them into the far turn. Next, Treble Clef is chasing into second, running a big race to his outside. Dave Vernon, Truculent is under a drive. Magic Michael's into 4th. And Next, the defending champion, is opening up. They go around the far turn. And Next, Treble Clef, the other gray, chases into second, trying to reel in Next, who's doing it for fun right now. Machado has yet to ask. He is sitting so chilly, and Next is just opening up in an all-out canter. Magic Michael's in a drive, chasing him, a 16th left to go, and Next is on another level. He repeats in the Greenwood Cup. Next, what a horse he is, followed by Magic Michael.
Next, probably on the over-under. That was a severe under in margin of victory predicted since he'd won the race by 20+, and he was coming off the 20+ length win at Saratoga in the Birdstone, but just as handy as you could have asked for in that race. He's too good for that division of horses at this point, Jeff, but I don't fault anybody for taking a paycheck.
Well, maybe not, but Next is done with this group, I think. Now he's going to go on to the Breeders' Cup. The trainer has been talking about which race he wants to go, and whether it be the 1.25 miles, which would keep him on dirt, or the 1.5 miles, which would have him run on grass. But there are so many. I mean, he said he's leaning towards the turf, and I if he needs a push, do it. Because the turf is the right move. I don't think there's any question about that. Next, by the way, I was looking at the fractions in here, and he went 3/4 in 1:16 and 2. He's going to have to cope with a 109 and change first 3/4 if he goes to the Classic. The Classic's going to remember how Knicks Go won it. I mean, you go to the front and just run everybody off their feet. And there's 3 or 4 horses that like to run that way who are going to run in the 1.25 miles Classic this year. So you're going to have a fast early, fast middle, fast late splits. And that's not what Next really wants to do. He's more of a galloper, But you go 1.5 miles, instead of having to worry about coping with a 109 and 1/3, you'll be going out there going in 112 or something, which is what he wants to do. One thing that was maybe overlooked a little bit here, I don't know if I've ever seen this, but in this 1.5 miles race we just saw, the fastest quarter of a mile was the last one. It was faster than every other quarter mile on the clock. And Next is comfortable doing that. He's comfortable getting out there and getting into his rhythm. And he explodes in the final quarter, 24 and 3 last quarter, under wraps. So I don't think there's any question that he will be much more comfortable, much happier, much more in his zone and in his comfort zone if he goes in the 1.5 miles. And it's not like he doesn't like the grass. He's won 3 races on the grass. I mean, he can do that. He's a beautiful athlete, beautiful mover, fluid action, can run on anything. By a Son of Giants Causeway, he's actually got grass pedigree. There is not only should he run in the 1.5 miles, the Breeders' Cup turf, but I would have to think that as the morning line favorite for the Breeders' Cup this year, I'm going to make him favorite. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I know Rebels Romance has won the race already, but the North American turf horses are just so average. Now, Johannes is above average. He's very good, but he's a miler. I'm talking about the 1.5 miles type horses.
Right.
To me, the way Next has been running and the way he's been breezing and his numbers and his acceleration, and I mean, he's got to go there. He's got to run in the 1.5 miles turf.
Yeah, there's just no main sequence or bricks and mortar kind of horse in the U.S. this year. And among the internationals, you're looking at, the defending champ, Auguste Rodan, looking like he's passing this one up to go overseas and run in Japan, something like that for him at the end of the year. There are just, there's no big enable or something like that. There might be a good year for a Distaffer to go and try to win the turf, going the 1.5 miles from Europe. We'll see who shows up there. But if you look at the international markets right now, they are just like coin flips on who's going to show up from Europe, to the point where Rebels Romance, who we're going to see in just a little bit, is actually the favorite right now for the Breeders' Cup Turf off a win in Germany. Of course, he's 6 years old, won this race 2 years ago. We'll talk more Rebels Romance in just a second, but not a bad year for Next to give the shot to the turf. I'm glad he wasn't running on the turf last Saturday at Parks, though, Jeff. Before we leave these Parks races and all the glowing, hey, it was a great day at Parks talk, what an abomination that turf course was. A horse injured early in the card. The rest of the turf races, including the stakes race, the Turf Monster, taken off the grass later in the day. Get that stuff fixed. What is going on in America where Churchill Downs can't run a turf race in September? Parks can't keep a turf course together. They were just coming off like where they had the month break, like during Saratoga, where they had the long let break. What is going on with grass conditions around and turf course maintenance in the U.S.? Fairgrounds had a ton of trouble over the past year or so, but keeping the heat on Parks here, just inexcusable for this time of year. They're going to shut their turf down and run year round there, of course, like they always do, and put the turf course away for the year. But when you've got a big card like this towards the end of the season, it's Labor Day. I mean, this isn't the first week of November. It's like just past Labor Day into the end of September. No excuse for the course to be in that kind of condition on a big racing day like that.
Well, I mean, trainers, the money's great, but if you got a horse, I was holding my breath for Next, but that was the main track. To me, that track, I know it's your backyard, Jeremy. You've got a much better pulse on what goes on there than I do. But I shake my head, and it's funny because we have a ton of grass racing here at Santa Anita and Del Mar, and I've never seen either one of those turf courses in better shape, despite the fact that it gets used so much. I know the weather is great out here. We don't have to worry about rain and all that, and that may be part of it. But still, I'd hold my breath if I went out of town from anywhere to go to a course like that. Saratoga had a terrible luck last year, not this season, with the grass course. It was better this year, but you should never. Put in an all weather if you have to, as a backstop, just in case. You can go to that. But you're right. It was like running. It was just awful. But
I worked at Parks 99 into 2000 for the Racing Network, which is based out of the upstairs press box area there at Parks Satellite Racing Network. I could say then, and I can say now, it's, then it was phone betting and the casino wasn't there yet. But since then, it's become a casino with a dirt oval. That's it. And without the casino, there'd be no interest in the dirt oval there. And that's the shame of it. And if you're going to run big time races and have a big time day like they did, and, TV coming in to do it, national TV audience, you got to do better, man. You just got to do better than that. With all the money that came in from slots throughout the course of 365 days, and we're talking a massive casino operation there, massive. You got to take care of the course.
You have to. One more thing I want to throw out. I want to be the first on my block to say this, and will be the only one on my block to say this. But given the scenario of a crazy horse winning the Classic, thorpedoana getting beat in the distaff, and Next going out and pulverizing the field, which I think he's going to do in the Breeders' Cup Turf, could he get some votes for Horse of the Year?
If he wins the Breeders' Cup Turf, he's a finalist for Horse of the Year. He's right there. Yeah, okay. And you would have an interesting scenario if thorpedoana wins the distaff, he wins the turf, and somebody in the Classic of repute, of fierceness, or somebody like that who's had a big year. Absolutely. I think Next is not out of the Horse of the Year consideration. He's also just like we're talking about thorpedoana, like where the trajectory could be going down with her, or she could be Horse of the Year. He could be Horse of the Year or considered an irrelevant niche horse,
Right.
Just like when you take, Pepper's Pride, who won 19, 20 in a row or whatever it was out of New Mexico. Yeah, everybody says, "Oh, you got to go take on one of the big horses. Go take on one of the big horses." You're only one resounding defeat away from being irrelevant then after that, right? And that's what could happen the next. If he comes and runs against some big boys and just runs 7th beat in a mile, everybody will say, well, he was a good Power 5 team, but he didn't belong in the playoffs. That sort of deal like that. A group of 5 team, not a Power 5, as they say in college football.
Right.
We'll find out. I mean, you think he's extremely talented. I agree with you on that, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do on a big stage. But if he fails, then everybody will say, "I told you so," who didn't believe in him. And the people who did believe in him, if he runs well, are going to be just swelled with pride, because this has been a really fun horse to follow.
I will say one more thing about Next, and that is, and this is something that I put a lot of stock into. Horses aren't pieces of paper; they're athletes, and if you can appreciate an athlete like Next, he is such a fluid, easy mover. He's got a flawless action. I mean, he's like a machine, and that's one of the reasons why he looks so good when he wins, because he's in that rhythm, and he's always finishing well. And that's why I think he'll handle any surface, even the mud, if he ever asked him to do it. That's how good he is. And in addition to being blessed with God-given ability, he is one of the best athletes in terms of being a racehorse. Secretariat was that way too. He was so big, but he's such a he floated over the ground. That's why I think Next can handle any assignment. Anyway, hope that he makes it out here, and I'll drive down a 200-mile round trip just to watch him breeze if he does that here. I don't know what the plan's going to be. They hardly ever breeze him. He doesn't need to.
Right.
He never works out. He doesn't have to. Run a race, give him a 52 breeze, and then run him again 6 weeks later. It doesn't matter. That's how
That's
good
one
he is.
thing. That's one thing I have in common with Next. We never work out. Let's go to our 4th topic this week on It's Official, our Breeders' Cup tracker. We are looking at the Classic and the Turf divisions. We've already talked a little bit about them, but there is more news in those divisions to talk about. City of Troy worked last Friday at Southwell Racecourse on the all-weather. Aidan O'Brien was able to set up a little pseudo morning practice race for him with 4 other barn mates from the gate. Let's give you a chance. If you saw our Friday show, you saw this because we came on the air just about 10 minutes after it happened, but a lot of folks may not have seen it to this point. Let's recap it. Here is the work from Sky Sports Racing and their commentary. City of Troy last Friday at Southwell.
Stand side the American gates, and they jump away to work over the mile. And the early pace comes from the inside. Congo River goes on from Democracy. City of Troy's taken a sit back in 3rd place on the rail. Edwardian pushes forward towards the outside in the purple silks. And Master of the Hunt just in front of City of Troy as they work down the back stretch at Southwell. And City of Troy's last of the 5 as they head towards the turn out of the back stretch. The early pace coming from Congo River. Congo River has the lead by about 2 lengths, pushed along in 2nd, Edwardian. On the outside is Democracy. Master of the Hunt in behind those, and toying with them at the minute to the back of the field is City of Troy. As you would expect, he's got a good couple of stone in hand of this rivals. Edwardian drops away up the final turn. Congo River with the lead. Democracy, City of Troy breezes up in between horses. Master of the Hunt on his outside, down towards the home stretch at Southwell. And Democracy with the lead, but here comes down towards the 2-pole City of Troy. Arriving there full of running. Nearly 4 in a line as they come down towards the final furlong, but City of Troy easing into the leads. As you would expect, is well clear on the official figures and into the closing stages. Ryan Moore just asking City of Troy to quicken. And the Derby winner goes away towards the line. Quickens nicely in the closing stages. And City of Troy has its workouts for the...
To the applause of fans at Southwell there with the nice work in the morning. I did a bad job setting it up because if you're not familiar with City of Troy, this is the Epsom Derby winner who also won the Juddmonte International, beating older horses most recently. Top turf horse in Europe, now aimed for the Breeders' Cup Classic on dirt. Jeffy's by Justify, of course, our Triple Crown winner. And Aidan O'Brien's brought some good ones over here in the past to try the Classic. This might be among the best that he's tried it with. What did you make of the work, and what do you make make of the horse who's currently the favorite in the international books to win the Breeders' Cup Classic?
Well, on pure resume, if you count the English races as equal to the Americans, which I think is not really right. I think the English horses are better. But he would probably deserve to be favored if you believed or had confidence that he would handle dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I, was glowing in my praise of the way Next travels, I mean, this colt travels just as well. He's got a long stride, effortless. He looks like an American horse, doesn't he, Jeremy? I mean, the way he moves.
Yeah.
And of course, being by Justify, I mean, it just so happens that he found himself overseas. But can you imagine what he would be like if he were brought up and raced and trained in the States? Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's going to be any issue. The only problem that I see is the kickback. And I don't know if he's going to enjoy that. He's never had it. He certainly didn't have it in the all-weather here. And I don't think his style of laying back and making one run is going to be terribly effective over a track that not only is very kind to speed, or at least has been this year, but at that distance, they just don't come back. So he better, I hope they realize you better be in the fray. I mean, I'm saying you got to be in front, but I don't want you 7th or 8th or 9th early on passing the stands. You're going to give yourself a very difficult, a very tall task. But if he arrives fit and ready and runs as well as he just worked in this work and runs as well as he's been racing, I mean, to me, he would be the horse to beat. Whether it would be favored or not, I don't know, but I think he would be my top selection.
Interesting. They tried to just send him right to the front last time out in the Juddmonte International to kind of simulate an American race. He had not been a horse who's been making the pace in his bigger races. They did that in the Juddmonte International, and he looked fantastic, just, running everybody into the ground and then pulling away late. So, yes, they've got to keep him in the race. And I think putting him behind these 4 horses here was to try to get a little bit of kickback. It's not the same on a synthetic track, as you mentioned there at Southwell, that he'll see with the dirt at Del Mar. But I don't think, if he's going to be competitive, I don't think he's going to be coming from 7th or 8th. He's either going to be up into the race in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and you'll know going into the clubhouse turn whether he's going to be a player or not. If he's right up there 2-3 going into the clubhouse turn, then he's going to be formidable, I think, throughout the running. And maybe they try to keep him outside and things like that you do to try to avoid some kickback. Even if you're running 3rd or 4th, you might be out in the 3-4 path just to avoid some of that and not get, covered up, as they say on the turf. You want to be covered up inside of horses. They definitely don't want to be covered up with a horse like that going first time on the dirt.
Of course, that assumes that they know that. And I'll give them a little bit of a push. I'll go down there and I will have an interview with Aiden, and I'll say, are you planning on laying fairly close to the pace? Will be my question. Are you with my background? Are you planning on being fairly close to the pace early, or are you stupidly going to take them back?
Credentials revoked. They're going to run you out of there. For Cullen Aiden O'Brien, stupid. All right, so let's go now from one international star, City of Troy, heading towards the Classic, to a horse we've already mentioned on the podcast, Rebels Romance, winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf 2 years ago. Suddenly has found himself in the favorites role in the international books. He's now 5-1 favorite for the Breeders' Cup Turf at age 6. He just comes off a victory last time out in the Prix Van Europa at Cologne. Jeff never fails to give me some German racing when we need it. Here we go. Let's go to Cologne, and Der Kommissar, don't turn around. It's kind of the way the call sounds.
For Rebels Romance, der jetzt ins Rollen kommt. Straight dahinter auf freie Bahn, beordert Rodan zum Zuschauen, verdammt. Rebels Romance geht nach vorne. Rebels Romance vor Straight an der Außenseite. Palladium an der Innenseite, Travenos. Rebels Romance straight, was ist denn hier los? Straight an der Außenseite mit Rebels Romance innen. Rebels Romance, der hat so viel Klasse. Der lässt ihn eiskalt abtropfen. Rebels Romance gegen Straight, der läuft dennoch riesig. Dann Rodan.
Hard-fought victory there in Germany. Of course, he came from Germany before he came to the U.S. before and has had success. He's got the Godolphin Blue, which Charlie Appleby. He's never been considered. I mean, he's won, 6 Group 1 races now, but he's never felt like he was the head of the Godolphin class at any particular time. But here he is again. You can't get rid of him.
You're right about that. 2 years later, we were on his bandwagon, you and I, way back in, I think, June of 2 years ago, before anybody even heard of him. Came over here, won the Breeders' Cup. He had some races that were below his best, but he's back in winning form now. Yeah. And it's funny, in this race, it looked like he might have was about to get worn down in the final 70 yards or so, and then the other horse came to him, and he just kind of, and flew off and galloped out 100 miles in front. So I think he's going to be back at his best, and that'll make for an interesting race. Rebels Romance versus Next and others. I hope it comes to pass. Rebels Romance very rarely wins off by himself, but if you give him a yard, he'll take 10 yards. I mean, he's one of these horses that is relentless. He's a pro, and he's hard to beat when he's on his game.
Of course, news out of Europe as well, with Aidan O'Brien sending City of Troy to the Classic. Last year's turf winner, Auguste Rodan, seemed to be, kind of penciled in to come back and run in this year's Breeders' Cup Turf, but that doesn't look like where he's headed in the way the betting in the international books is looking. He's drifting up in price because they don't think he's going to run here. Instead, probably running in the Japan Cup at season's end for him. So no Auguste Rodan, no City of Troy, no superstar in Europe to come over. We talked about the Americans not having any superstars in the turf division. Suddenly that talk of Next just kind of feels like it might be the right year to be in the right situation, the right horse at the right time, maybe in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And maybe, just maybe, he's as good as the potential is. And it wouldn't matter if there's a good horse coming over. He might be just that good right now, no matter who he goes against over any distance, over any ground. Should be interesting. So that's our news out of the Breeders' Cup Turf division. Now, let's go to the Classic division here and talk about some horses that are going to run in Japan on Wednesday night into Thursday morning here, stateside time. We're talking about a race in Japan this week at the Funabashi Racecourse on Wednesday night. We're going to see Ushpa Tesoro and Derma Sotogaki go in that race just outside of Tokyo. It's a 1 1/8 race. This is their prep to come back to the Breeders' Cup Classic. They were in this race a year ago. Derma Sotogaki, Ushpa Tesoro, two horses we know. Ushpa Tesoro, of course, got a really strong international resume. Derma Sotogaki won the UAE Derby and came over here for the Kentucky Derby a couple years ago. We've got some interesting work video. Twitter's a beautiful thing, and that keeping the world close, if you will. It's a horrible thing in a lot of places, but in this case, it's a good thing. International workout video from the Japan Racing Association. How do you like that, Jeff? We're going to get to see Ushpa Tesoro and Derma Sotogaki in recent days in their training. I'm going to let the video roll here. We'll start with Ushpa Tesoro. Can't wait to see these two showdown Wednesday.
Yeah, this is going to be worth getting up at midnight if I can find it somewhere on the internet or wherever. I want to watch
Express Bet. We will have watching and wagering at Express Bet and First Bet.
Well, then you've answered my question. See,
here is Derma Sotogaki.
Yeah. By the way, we're better to prep for a Breeders' Cup Classic on the tight Del Mar 1 mile main track than over a track in Japan that is only 7/8 in circumference. So you gotta be pretty handy to win there, and both these horses are. The one thing though about Ushpa Tesoro is that he doesn't really have a lot of tactical speed, and the other colt, Derma Sotogaki, is very one-paced. He doesn't have a great move. He almost has to start where he's going to finish, if you know what I mean. Which is one of the reasons why. And remember his great race in Dubai when he was all the rage. He went gate to wire. He's not really that quick, and if he can't get to the front and is forced to settle and sit 4th or 5th, that's probably where he's going to finish because he has no move. I'm really more interested in down the road and seeing where the 3-year-old runs. I want to see him run. And he's a week away? Did you say?
Yeah, he's going to run Japan Cup Dirt, I believe October 2nd or 3rd. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But I'll watch this one as well, and. I hope they run well. And it just makes the Classic even more competitive than it's already going to be anyway. But both those colts are on their best day. If everything goes their way, they can run with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Ushpa Tesoro, Derma Sotogaki meet at Funabashi Race. The Nippon TV High Stakes. I failed to mention the name of the race, but we'll be checking that one out for sure. Both of those Japanese horses we're talking about are offered at 25-1 right now in the international books for the Breeders' Cup. That's not a bad stab. They're both high-quality horses, Ushpa Tesoro and Derma Sotogaki. 25-1, that's not too bad of a future look. If you like one, maybe get in before the wager or before the race coming up, the final prep coming up Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Also in the Classic division this week, we mentioned it's opening weekend at Santa Anita on Friday. Opening weekend continues Saturday with the inaugural California Crown event. Plenty going on off the track, but on the track, 3 major stakes races, including the $1 million California Crown. This race 4 years was run as the Awesome Again Stakes, and this year, with the $1 million purse, increased purse has brought together a field that includes 3 Bob Bafferts of national repute. National Treasure, the Preakness winner, and this year's Met Mile winner. You got Newgate, winner of the Santa Anita Handicap earlier this year, and you've got Arkansas Derby winner Muth, trying older horses for the first time. He was back for the first time in about 5 months with a victory in the Shared Belief. You also have Senor Buscador, the $12.5 million earner. Senor Buscador, 10th richest horse in the history of North American racing, off of a fantastic spring that he had, winning the $20 million Saudi Cup and running, third in the Dubai World Cup. He had a great spring where he banked a lot of money. Jeff Siegel, you're the morning line maker at Santa Anita. Give us a little sense of how you see the prices in this race, and we'll talk a little bit about the California Crown coming up on Saturday.
The National Treasure I made favorite at 8-5 because he has consistently better speed figures than his stablemate Muth. Now, Muth is a 3-year-old getting better. I've watched them both train. They both look fine, although I think I've never seen Muth look better. I expect him to run a career top. And if you look at the projected pace situation here, National Treasure is best on the lead. Muth can stalk. I think Bob Baffert's going to orchestrate this race to allow both to have their chance.
Right.
I'm not sure Newgate is up to this level. Subsanador is coming off a win, but not against this level. Senor Buscador is got to come from farther back than I think I want to see, and the rest of them are overmatched. So to me, I made National Treasure the morning line favorite at 8-5, Muth at 2. But I think if I were gambling in this race, I'd gamble on Muth, actually, based on what I've seen and based on the trip that he's had. I think Muth is better than he's ever been. National Treasure coming off a trouncing, I'm not sure where he's at. But I think the public's going to make him favorite because if you look at the numbers and the buyer speed figures, he's just consistently way faster.
Yeah, the blip on the radar last out was on an off track, and National Treasure's run 3 times on an off track and ran poorly all 3 times.
True.
So we're going to get a fast track at Santa Anita on Saturday, almost certainly this time of year. So, we expect maybe the track condition to kind of bring him back to his best form. You can get more of Jeff's thoughts on the California Crown card in our California Crown wager guide. That will be available Tuesday late afternoon into the evening and available all week with updates. Jeff's going to handicap not only the California Crown as part of our big consensus grid with all the handicappers across the first family, but he's also going to focus in on the John Henry Turf Championship, part of the California Crown series as well. So you can get Jeff's video and wagering analysis for that big race. Millie Ball is in the wager guide. She's going to take care of the California Crown Eddie D Stakes for turf sprinters. She'll have her analysis. And then coming up on Thursday's update, Eddie Olczyk will give us his analysis, video, and wagering strategies for the California Crown main event race, the $1 million features. So be sure to check it out. Go to news.first.com and click on the wager guide section. Everything should be up there, updated horse profiles, historical stats, XBTV workouts. We've got a lot of great works for all 3 of these big California Crown races coming up on Saturday. So be sure to check that out. News.first.com and then click on the wager guide link, and you can check out the California Crown wager guide presented by First. Also, a couple other quick notes before we drop the Breeders' Cup tracker. We've got some other classic races this weekend. Only a field of 4 remains after a scratch in the Woodward. Skippy Longstocking expected to be a solid favorite there at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet. And then the Lucas Classic at Churchill Downs in the Breeders' Cup Classic or Dirt Mile division, perhaps. Disarm, Hit Show, the big names in that race. So not a lot of heaviness, probably more Dirt Mile horses. Skippy Longstocking last year went to the Dirt Mile. So maybe Dirt Mile preps in the Woodward and the Lucas Classic more so than the Breeders' Cup Classic. But Jeff, any thoughts there before we head to our star tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that the classic contenders are pretty well established, but the Dirt could help. The Dirt Mile could use some help. So let's see what happens. Skippy Longstocking, who's probably going to win this race, I would think, on Saturday. He ran well in the Breeders' Cup Dirt last year, and so I don't know what reason why they wouldn't point for that. He's consistently shown that if you run him where he belongs, he's really, really good. But if you ask him to do too much, he's not so good. So I don't think they'll be too ambitious with him. I expect them to see him win this race, and then hopefully we'll see him out here in California.
All right, let's go to our fifth and final topic this week on It's Official, our Stars of Tomorrow, as it is each and every week. We're going to head to Churchill Downs last Friday on the 20th. A 2-year-old filly unveiled for trainer Brad Cox. She looked awfully good in the first start.
Muhima continues to travel well and comes on to take the lead off the turn. It's Muhima in front. My Little Punky tries to respond, but is back into second. Ever Loving is third. Brave Samantha's in fourth. They're inside the final furlong, and Muhima's moving away. Clear by 5 lengths with a 16th to go, and she lives up to the odds. Muhima streaking under the wire to win it by 6 or so.
Jeff, tell us about this impressive first-timer.
Well, first of all, she's not, even though she's by Munnings, you would expect her to be much better over a distance of ground on grass, although Munnings can get you a fast horse for sure. 115 and 2, 6.5 furlong, 7.5 length margin of victory, ridden out, but certainly looking around and enjoying herself. I mentioned the pedigree. She's out of a Tappet mare named Princessa Carolina, who was a winner of the Dueling Grounds Oaks in her racing career,
Right.
also Group 1 placed in the Queen Elizabeth Keeneland. So that's all grass. Second dam, Pure Clan, filly who won 8 out of 16, won the American Oaks, Group 1 winner of 1.25 miles out here in California, also the Flower Bowl. That's long distance turf. Third dam is an Irish bred filly named Catherine Clan. Gather the Clan. She won the Violet. That's a long distance turf race. So, I mean, this filly's doing something that she really isn't bred to do, spray on dirt. But when she starts going long and gets on her, what I think will be her preferred surface for Brad Cox, I mean, she could be terrific. And I'm not so sure how quickly they're going to be doing that. She's just a baby. She's 2 years old. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. There's a lot of money to be won on the dirt if she can do that. So sky's the limit, and all kinds of options here for Brad Cox and this filly who's a homebred and owned by Shadwell. Ugh, salty.
The Jessamine might come up a little quick the second, third week at Keeneland there, but that's the kind of race maybe we could see her get a shot to run on the turf at some point in the very near future. That's a wrap for our topics this week on It's Official. We review them. Torpedoana's close call at Parks. We're wondering how she's going to work next coming into the Breeders' Cup Distaff, where she's the 6-5 anti-post favorite in the international books. The power of Lone Speed was on display again. They handed Seize the Gray the lead, and he did not give it back in winning the Pennsylvania Derby. Up next, either Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile or Classic. It's kind of a coin flip decision there for this year's Preakness winner. Only one choice, though, for next when it comes to the Breeders' Cup. A mammoth win in the Greenwood Cup at Park sets him up, Jeff says, for a date in the Breeders' Cup turf. We want to see him on the grass and stay at the 1.5 miles so that pace can just emphasize his ability to stay and kick late. The Breeders' Cup tracker took us across the world. We looked at City of Troy's work last week at Southwell, Rebels Romance win in Germany, and we talked about some Breeders' Cup Classic contenders running in Japan this week, Derma Sotogake and Ushba Tesoro. Also looked ahead to the California Crown coming up this Saturday at Santa Anita. In our star of tomorrow, Mohima, first-time winner at Churchill Downs last Friday. Those 5 topics are now official. Because Jeff Siegel and I said so, that's how we do it, and we'll do it all again in 7 days' time. But between now and then, be sure to check out the wager guide for the California Crown. Again, go to news.first.com and click in the wager guide section. We'll have that up Tuesday afternoon into evening and ready for you to go. And Jeff and I will be back on Friday to do our video handicapping podcast when we get on the First Call podcast, looking at not only the California Crown, but also stakes races all around the country. Jeff, I was looking at doing a blog like I did a few weeks ago. I did 18 stakes in 18 sentences because there were so many good stakes around the country. If I do it this weekend, I think I'm at 34 stakes that are going to be run over the weekend. So there are a lot of great stakes races, coast to coast, Saturday and Sunday, and a huge opening 3 days at Santa Anita for you.
I'm looking for some huge performances this week. I want the stars to arrive for Breeders' Cup this year in peak form. It'll make for a glorious couple of days of racing and a lot at stake. Not only this week to work your way into the mix there if you're if you're marginal, but trying to figure out who the main contenders will be and maybe find a long shot or two. Who knows? It's gambling too. So we'll be watching those races very carefully, not only here at Santa Anita, but around the country as well. So looking forward to that. And we'll talk to you Friday. Maybe we can pick a few winners this week and maybe make some money.
Build your bankroll tonight to get $150,000 plus carryover on closing night at Assiniboia Downs. Get in on that Pick 5 mandatory payout tonight. You can watch and wager. First Bet and Express Bet will have it for you. Yes, I do play Assiniboia Downs on occasion. This will be another occasion tonight with that nice carryover. We'll talk to you on Friday, everybody. Have a great week.